Well, welcome everybody. We're here with the members-only session of the Enterprise DNA Summit. And with me today, I've got three members at different stages of their careers and different involvement in Power BI. And what we wanted to do today is something a little bit different, that in the course of the summit, we talk a lot about technical issues. We talk a lot about design issues. And what we wanted to do for this session is really get to the people issues and talk about really the motto behind me in terms of empowering Power BI users to change their world and kind of what that means at an individual level and the ways in which learning Power BI and involvement in this platform have really kind of changed the world for a number of our members. And certainly it's true for myself. And I've got three members here who I've gotten to know just through our community, through the forum, through the expert team, through kind of individual conversations. So we've got Tim, Shrestha, and Paul here today. And what I'd like to do is just get them briefly to introduce themselves. Just talk a little bit about yourself, kind of how long you've been involved with Power BI, and just briefly what you were doing before you became involved with Power BI. So just give people kind of a little bit of background on where you were coming from.
Ladies first.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. So, hello, everybody. I am from India, a state called West Bengal. And so I'm very new to Power BI. It's been close to 1 year, I would say. But and also I'm a 2020 graduate, the COVID year. So I wanted to get into data analytics from the very beginning, but somehow, because of revoking of offer and all that, I could not get into that. So I started my career with a market research job, very much different from whatever I'm doing right now. Then I shifted to, after spending 8 months there, I shifted to finance. And then I was not at all satisfied with whatever I was doing. So then I was following all the, so why Power BI? So not a very, I don't have a good answer, just that I learned from Brian, from everybody around, that it has huge demand in the market across world. So that is one reason. Secondly, when I saw the dashboards, which, a lot of people created and posted on LinkedIn, all those data challenges, some of them were from DNA Enterprise data challenges, some other institutes. So I saw how interactive they were. And at that point of time, I only knew Excel. I tried making dashboards through Excel. So I was taken aback when I saw those, the UI of Power BI, which was so beautiful. So all these things attracted me initially. And then I learned Power BI from all the free sources available in YouTube. But then I did not get any in-depth knowledge from that, or maybe all the DAX or whatever was coming was very overwhelming for me initially. Then I connected to Brian, and he guided me, how to do it like step by step. He forwarded me a learning plan. So, take one thing at a time. Maybe first learn about the modeling. Then learn about how to transform data in the Power Query. Then get into DAX and also the different kind of visualizations you can use for different categories of data. So all these things. But my first dashboard I made was, when I took that course, it was Power BI workshop for super users by Sam. It was such a wholesome course, and I made my first complete, that was a sales dashboard. And I was very much confident after that. And I thought that I know all of Power BI. But, and that course followed by, mastering DAX calculations. Again, revamped confidence. But then after that, I started giving interviews. And I was lucky enough to find a job very quickly. In the job I'm doing in my current organization as an associate consultant, BI. But when I got into, so cracking the interview was easy. I showcased them all the dashboards I made through those courses. and also the data challenges I participated in. But when I was given a project, then I could, understand what the technicalities and what so it was very tough for me to, satisfy the client requirements, each day different requirements. So that is when, like, that phase is right now, where, I'm working with a client where, and it's a Fortune 500 company, and they have a lot of so their requirements keeps on changing. The data is quite complex. So right now, sometimes I, my go-to is always Google, and then Brian, or maybe somebody from the organization. So I keep on, bugging them, please tell me how to do this, please tell me. So they, the time difference is a challenge, Brian, but they somehow, Brian helps me. And so, yeah, this is how I'm learning Power BI every day. Until and unless you have a hands-on experience working on a client project, maybe that is when you actually start learning. So yeah, that is pretty much about it.
That's great. And we'll definitely get into the hands-on aspect of it, because I think you raised a ton of good points there in terms of kind of the learning path and hands-on and the challenge practice. And so we're definitely going to delve into all that. So Paul, why don't you jump in and just kind of talk a little bit about, kind of where you were and how you intersected with this path.
Yeah. My name's Paul Gerber. I'm a chemical engineer, been in the oil and gas industry since '05. So I've always been involved with data and problem solving, my whole life. I guess the current company I'm working for, we use they didn't use Power BI at all. Everybody's in that sense of using Excel for everything, and really spending hours doing work on that. So I, about a year ago, was looking at different, aspects on helping my job, making it easier on me, and stumbled across Power BI with the Microsoft Office platform, and was kind of curious on, what that was. So I started implementing that on my own, with inventory, tracking tickets, things like that. Really started developing just a huge interest in it. So fast forward a little bit, I guess digging in, wanted to learn a little bit more. So I did the same thing, like what she had mentioned. You have your YouTube videos, sources out there on the web, but you couldn't really dig in, into detail with it. So any Google search, enterprise DNA kept coming up. And that's when I got connected with you, Brian, and started taking off with it, doing the challenges, really honing in on my skills. And just at first, just wanted to learn as much as I could in a short period of time, which I think, hindsight, looking back, that's overwhelming for anyone, because you just think, oh my gosh, I got to get so much. This is so great. And then you take off with your dashboards and your visuals, and it's too much, too busy. So you got to look back, and kind of recollect, how you want to approach this. So the DNA, the Enterprise DNA package, helped me tremendously, and of course, giving you kudos, letting me have, get a membership involved. Man, it just paid off so much. It's done so well for me that really started implementing a lot more at my work. So, like I told you earlier this morning, my boss had said, how did you become the company-wide Power BI guy? And I said, well, it just happened because I think, well, anybody, and y'all can agree, but anybody that has not seen Power BI and they just think, oh, it's this tool that just makes pretty visuals and, graphs, and Excel can do that. Well, yes, but take you hours. But the common response from anyone is, I can't believe you turned that, meaning the data, the big Excel spreadsheet with 27 tabs, into something useful and insightful. And even add a little bit more, like the smart narrative and the forecasting and scenario analysis. So once I started showing that, and Brian, we've talked about that offline, board members involved.
Yeah.
So, you start exposing people in the company, the finance department, board members, sales. Well, wow, can you do this? Can we add this? Can we do that? And then it just keeps building and building and building. So,
I think, Paul, I've said before that I kind of wish every Power BI user would have the opportunity to present a dashboard or a report to people who've never seen Power BI before, because it's just an amazing experience to just watch people just watch their jaws drop and say, I can't, as you say, I can't believe you can do this with the data and make it
absolutely
so interactive. And I remember the first time I did that, and, the reaction I got, it was like, showing fire to cavemen, and they just couldn't believe what this was able to do. And I look back in the report now, is pretty simple, but at the time they were like, this is amazing. And that is kind of how you become, the Power BI person. But so I want to kind of flip over to Tim, and then we'll kind of dig into a number of the issues you raised and that Shrestha raised.
Thanks, Brian, and happy to be here. I'm Tim Weinzapfel. I have been using Power BI now for well over 5 years, and I sort of took a different approach. Unlike, I think, some most traditional people who get into Power BI, being in a financial or a data sort of data analyst type role. My role has traditionally been in the U.S. government contracting sector, dealing with actual contracts and the paperwork. So not really what one would consider a data-driven career, if you will. But I have a huge passion for data. So when I got exposed to Power BI, and Brian, what you just said was exactly what happened. We had an individual sort of presented this tool at I was in a meeting at work, and I was like blown away that this is the greatest thing, allowing you to do slicers and filters. And I immediately went right back, downloaded it, and that weekend was starting to work with it. And just from there, it really was that eye-opening moment. So very similar to Paul and Shrestha, started diving into it, found enterprise DNA. But really, one thing I'll say is, because my role back then, and sort of where my career has taken me, has not been in a traditional in working with finance or data, or in manufacturing, that sort of where you're tracking volume. I had to sort of find data in other areas, and one thing I learned is that data is everywhere, and when you have data, Power BI is a great tool. And of course, we won't get into Power Apps and the other Power Platform, but it just became a great tool to analyze the data and use it for one's purpose. So that is an area where it's just, and as it continues to grow, again, there's just so many opportunities out there. So that's just a quick background on myself.
And Tim, it's interesting because, that I spent 30 years in the government. And so, yours and my worlds kind of overlap in that way, in the government contracting aspect of things, and just kind of the way I saw Power BI be able to take data from that area and, make it into something usable and translatable for people. Really, really pretty incredible. But Shrestha raised something that I wanted to surface with y'all, which is kind of that initial period when you come in and you look at Power BI, and it kind of can feel overwhelming, that, you start with that super user course, which is a great intro. And, you feel like, okay, I got a handle on this. And then you kind of get into that point where you realize, oh, wow, there's so much I don't know. And, kind of how you, and particularly Shrestha and Paul, the fact that you've made such enormous progress in a year. I mean, Tim's really the veteran in this group. I mean, 5 years of Power BI experience is about as long as it gets these days. And that's from pretty much the start. But for you two in particular, kind of how did you process that in terms of kind of this whole world of information about, Power BI out there and a million different things to learn? How did you focus your training, and how do you do that to this day?
Right. So yeah, it was overwhelming, and there was so much resource. Sometimes what happened was like maybe I started off with a plan, but then so many resource and videos or something came up, and somehow I diverged myself. So that is a challenge I still face because sometimes I like plan to learn. Maybe suppose I plan to learn M code, which I'm really scared of. Yeah. So but then a lot of other things come up, and somehow I don't reach the destination. So sometimes online resources can be overwhelming, and we have to be very focused on what we like want to understand. Otherwise I would say basically my studies or my training was mostly job oriented. So yeah, which is maybe not a fair thing to do, because sometimes I checked what kind of what are the in the job description what is written, or what are the interview questions they're asking. Sometimes I based my learning upon that, and sometimes it was just out of interest. New sometimes there's a very good channel called Goodly. So in Goodly, they give, there are Power BI challenges. Then there are eDNS accelerated challenges. So those were, blew my mind initially, but then after hours of brainstorming somehow, and with your help sometimes, I could, get through. So yeah, sometimes it was out of interest, or, trying out new challenges. And most of the time it was job oriented. So what the market demands, what is written in the JD. So that is how I moved forward.
That's great.
Hey, Brian, I think, I mean, my perspective, how I approached it, I remember, in the beginning, you're it's this new toy. And then you start finding out, there's SQL, there's Python, there's R, and you're just trying to get it in. And then you wrap it in with visualization, data storytelling. Mm-hmm. So I think, and I've seen this personally with others, especially now some are interested in Power BI at work. And they would ask me, hey, what do you even on LinkedIn, I've been asked, what's the best approach to learning all this? What do I do first? How do I start? And I think looking back, what helped me, you go back, I remember in schooling, any engineering course, learn the concept first. And I think with Power BI, the concept behind how it runs is DAX. And I think if you step back first, instead of trying to absorb everything at once, learn DAX coding and the background and understand how it works, why it works. Once you get that concept down, I think you can branch out to, okay, let's bring in Python, or let's bring in R. Let's include SQL, because I know online, a lot of job opportunities, hey, if you know Power BI and SQL, so what do you hit first? But I think focus on, and that's what I did. I tried to learn everything at once. And then I went back and said, I really need to refine. And I think starting with DAX, make sure you get a good handle on DAX first.
Good,
right.
Good
advice. So
advice.
that will also help you, mastering DAX will also help you with SQL. But yeah, in India also, like all the job descriptions, they also require mandatorily SQL along with Power BI. So, you just have to balance and study both. But if you are very good, if your DAX concepts are clear, I don't think SQL will be a problem. Yeah.
I mean, that's a great point in the sense that, just last month when we released two courses, one of them was from the perspective of DAX users learning SQL, and one was from the perspective of SQL users applying that to DAX. And I think you're right that there's a great interchange between the two. So Tim, you were gonna jump in on something.
Yeah, Paul, what you were talking about all this to learn. I personally think, Brian, maybe you and I had a little easier getting into Power BI years ago when we didn't have all of this necessarily, or maybe there was, I just wasn't aware of it. But if I think about how Power BI has progressed over the 5 years that I have been involved in it, and seeing all of the new custom visualizations and integrations of R and Python, and Charticulator came out and I became familiar with that. And now there's the Neb, and it's like, back then it was a little easier to focus and narrow it to, it was DAX, it was, Power Query, it was visualizations, but now it is a little bit more of a challenge to where do you start? And so.
Yeah, I think that feeling of, trying to keep up. I mean, I'm old enough that I remember in the early days of the internet getting a newsletter with the new websites that came online that week. Okay. And, it was like 50 of them. And I kind of feel like that was the early days of Power BI, that there were like 4 or 5 content sites, and you could keep up with everything, because there just wasn't that much of it. But now it's trying to keep up with everything is just beyond impossible, and I one of the things that I talk about a lot with people is that if you kind of think of the 4 pillars of Power BI, of data prep, data modeling, data analysis, and data visualization, and then you add, kind of the distribution and administration side to that, there's nobody I know who's master of all those. That you have to be good at all of them to succeed. But in terms of truly mastering, a given pillar, I don't think it's possible anymore for one person to master kind of the whole thing at a truly expert level. But I want each of you mentioned challenges and, kind of the importance of putting your training to work in a practical way. And I know both Tim and Paul are challenge winners in the past. And I think Shrestha is a future, certainly a future star in the challenges. Just job has prevented her from entering as many as I'd like to see, but we'll try to get her entering more. But
yeah, sure.
But I wanted to hear from y'all kind of the impact that the challenges have had on your learning, and kind of how that's played out in your training, and then kind of the transferability of that to your work life.
I'll take a stab at that first, Paul. That's the one thing that challenges have been fantastic. I will tell you, the first one I entered I think it was last year's year back, I think it was number 5 maybe. I was like really nervous, and I was really excited because I felt like I had created a really nice report, and I turned it in, and it was like, wow, this is like nowhere near what everybody else was doing. But it was fun because it was putting myself out there. It was a really great experience. And then what I do with challenges is I use it for fun. It's a new way to try new techniques, see what others have done. So to me, that's what challenges is all about. It's getting in there, getting my hands dirty, using data in a different way, and really learning new techniques. So I always look forward to when the new challenge comes out, assuming I have time, but highly, 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 highly recommend them.
Yeah, I agree with Tim. I mean, yeah, my first one that I did was, I guess it was that environmental reporting number 17. You know, I just started back in December, so I was a newbie. But, you know, yeah, you do your first one and you think, yeah, I've got this in the bag. You know, this is impressive, which I mean, I got the newcomer winner at that time, but I was surprised because you do see others more, more seasoned, more experienced, and you see what they do, and you automatically think, oh, I could use that next time. So the challenges for me, they were fun in the sense it broke the monotony of what you see at work or day-to-day life, what you've been dealing with, that second one, grandma's biscuits. I thought it was actual bit like, I'm here in Oklahoma, so we're thinking biscuits and gravy, and I had my theme all set up for biscuits and gravy, and then found out, no, it's a cookie. And so I had to like redesign my whole theme and colors. And but yeah, it was fun. Even the call center one was fun for me as well. And I think that, like what Tim was mentioning, the challenges for me, I think, let you kind of express yourself in a way as far as storytelling, and those challenges have in reading that one book, Storytelling with Data.
Great
I
book.
think I've started using PowerPoint, and I think that's the one struggle. You either have a forte for it, or you kind of got to learn as you go. But to really make a dashboard visually, aesthetically pleasing or attractive, I think there's an art to that. But I think going back to the challenges, that it's helped me, even in my workplace, just have that, it's that wow factor with it. So I've enjoyed. I know Frederico was, he messaged me on LinkedIn, commented about that 1 week, revisiting inventory, the 1 week power challenge. He's like, Paul, baby. And I thought, well, I got enough on my plate, but I don't know. Are you tempting me? So, you have fun with it, but it's great to see all the other entries coming in. And I mean, you really do see a different flavor of people's, just thinking, how they lay it out, things like that. So, and back to your comment, Brian, no one's a master and expert.
Yeah.
I mean, you're always, and as long as you're always learning, I think that's great.
And I think, Tim brought up, something that I've always tried to do, which is I always say, kind of treat the challenge as your mad scientist lab. Take your craziest ideas and test them out. And some of them, for me, fail spectacularly. But in that failure, you learn things, and some of them succeed. And there are things I've tried or things I've seen other people try that I thought, wow, that's crazy. That's not going to work, and it worked beautifully. And then there are other times when you're like, wow, that's something I'm never going to do again. But that's good knowledge, and kind of having the safety to really try and, fail and experiment, in a safe context like the challenge, and then kind of take the lessons from that into your work, I think is really a, kind of a spectacular way to learn. But Shresh, I wanted Paul, raised something that, about kind of getting out of the norm of your work. Challenges kind of pull you into different aspects. And I know you're in consulting, and so you're probably constantly dealing with different clients, different requirements, different data. And I'm wondering kind of how you've dealt with that in terms of kind of the learning needed and the perspective of not having necessarily one particular domain, but kind of shifting across domains, and how you've adapted your learning to that.
Right. So currently I'm working with a retail company, and they have this retail data from, we are extracting data from POS and SAP, and then getting it into Power BI. So basically, when you talk about changing domain, I have not worked on like in office. I mean, on job, I have not worked with different. I didn't get the opportunity till now So retail is the one, my first project. But, I did not make much progress on data challenges. So what happens is I work on the weekdays, and I somehow I try to finish off the data challenge on the weekend. But then, this time there were 2 layers of it. Data was added. So I thought I will complete in one Sunday, but then it was not possible and I couldn't catch up. So this happened. And data, I would say, more than on-job experience, data challenges gave me the flavor of different domain. So I could not finish some of them, but I got the essence of, how to handle the, HR data or the call center data, or, the sales data. So I had that experience. And so I wait for others to post first, because my reports are really not up to the mark. And then, I come up with my one, and whenever I post it, and everybody likes, and all the feedbacks I receive, it has helped me in work. And also it's very satisfying when I receive the good or bad like nobody says anything bad, but sometimes critical. So yeah, it has helped me on job. And maybe I'll finish up your next data challenge successfully.
Great, great.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering, kind of from the perspective that each of you have of kind of being out ahead in some sense of, people in your organization and being kind of pioneers in Power BI. How has that presented challenges, and kind of how have you helped kind of further adoption of Power BI in your organizations? Kind of when you're out in that front role, and, Paul was saying, kind of how he's become, kind of the Power BI guy at work. And,
no, so I am not the Power BI guy or girl in the organization. I have mentors, and there are like Power BI champs in my organization. So I am not in that lead position, but sometimes like when anybody cannot solve, I have done it myself. It's very satisfying. Or sometimes, you have solved it for me, and I went back to them. So it was again satisfying at that time. But yeah, I'm learning from all. I have not reached that position where I can say that I'm the Power BI lead. So yeah, so I have many people to look up to right now.
And I think that's a huge part of it, is just kind of being in community. And, as we talk about it, I think, all of us kind of met through that, that community. And,
Right.
I continue, to use that as a, a resource every day, the LinkedIn community, the Enterprise DNA Forum, the expert community. And so I think that's a critical part of what we all do, particularly as we talk about, since you can't really master everything on your own. But so going back, to the prior question, maybe for Paul and Tim, where you guys have been kind of a lead point person for Power BI, kind of how has that played out in your organizations?
Man, it's one of those, it's like a blessing or a curse in disguise. At first, I think, my whole organization, we had that Office 365 package, and no one ever even looked at Power BI or the little app icon that was embedded, in your whole list, until I started using it on my own. But I think it just, like I was telling Darren, you just kind of, I guess in a way I forced it or pushed it, kind of not trying to brag about it, but say, hey, check this out. Have you, look at this, look what I'm tracking, or look what I'm doing. And, it's always, you get a raised eyebrow and they're intrigued by it. And then you start seeing the wheels turn. Well, can you do this? Well, can we bring this in, do that? And it's more involved now. You kind of let the cat out of the bag, and everybody in the organization is thinking, now I'm working on bring in our CRM through Dynamics 365 into Power BI and track wins and losses, on what products are sold, how are the salesmen ranking, revenue coming in, rig data reports, making a trip to Houston to visit with the finance department and train those guys. I mean, you open it all up and all of a sudden you're the go-to guy. But in the beginning, it was just kind of spoon feeding a little bit, because at first like, oh yeah, I can do that in Excel, making a power pivot, and do some graphs. I said, but how long does it take you? 3 hours? I could whip this out in 30 minutes, And so, and that's how it is involved at my workplace.
Great.
And I will add that, I started using it a while ago, and it was using it for my own team and my own work. But now that it's really taken off and within my organization, and we've got a broader community, if you will. So, we've started sort of a user group. We get to, have people get together, share things. I will say, Brian, several of us did our own challenge to kind of mimic that concept. We did it on a smaller scale, really to get people into it. And it was really well received. So looking to continue those. But one thing I really appreciate it especially with the user group within my organization is, we have people come and present and share, and no matter what level, like, where you're at. And like, I feel like I know it well. I've been using it for a while, but even just, hearing and seeing a report that somebody who's who's brand new putting together, you always walk away with something new. So the one thing I really appreciate especially within my own organization, again, is just that community of sharing information and just learning from one another. And it's a never ending path of just learning new things, because there's just so much to learn. So
that's great. And that it sounds like you all have a really pretty mature organization from a Power BI standpoint. If you've kind of got that community of practice internally,
I think we're getting there.
How many users do you have?
Ooh, that's hard to say. I don't know, probably 40, 50, could be more, could be less. And I think it's all varying ranges from individuals that are just getting into it, who are very familiar with, say, Excel. But it's interesting within the community, I sort of would think that most people that in my experience, I just assume are coming into Power BI are in a financial background. But what I'm learning is that's not true. I'm talking to and colleagues that are in a non-financial role, and they're using it for something. And it's like, wow. So my experience is there's just a lot of these users that are sort of hidden away in little pockets. And as you start to talk to folks, you really start to learn, like, oh, this is another way that people are using it. So it really is hard to assess that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I will say, because what Tim reminded me of something, when you introduce Power BI to a lot of people, especially your organization, I've noticed a trend now in a lot of different meetings that the word Power BI comes into play now. Well, we can bring this in and use it in Power BI. So it becomes a household name also.
Yeah, and you definitely, if you look in terms of like Google searches on Power BI, it's just exponentially increasing.
Yeah.
But I wanted to, as folks kind of listen to these stories and kind of look at where you all have come from, and somebody's saying, hey, I'm just kind of getting my feet wet in this. I'm just starting off, and I want to get into the the data analysis sphere. And what advice would you give them in terms of kind of lessons learned from your path? If you were to go back and kind of know what you know now at the time you started, what would you do differently? Or how would you advise somebody who is maybe you at the time you started on this path?
Take your time. Go into it. For me, I approached it a little bit more slowly. I was very eager. I mean, you know,
Yeah.
and just chomping away at everything. And, you know, you couldn't sleep. I mean, your brain was going 90 to nothing, just thinking of all this stuff. So I would say, I mean, you have time. Just make sure you take your time with learning, make sure you really understand it, go back, revisit, like I said, going back to those key concepts, and just make sure you're comfortable and confident in it first. But yeah, just slow down a little bit, because you rush into it like Sheree was saying, you know, it could be overwhelming.
Yeah. I do remember you, it seemed like you were on a path to learn it all in a week.
Yeah, I think you used the word shark.
Yeah. So Sharsha, how about you? You know, kind of what would you advise somebody, you know, kind of starting from the point you did, say, a year ago?
It's not been a long back time, but I would say that you have a lot of, sometimes what happens is we learn a lot of things. We practice a lot of things, but we are scared to present it in front of, you know, the community, the Power BI community, I mean. So what worked for me was, although my reports were really, you know, not up to the mark, so the KPIs maybe were not on point, the visualizations were not on point, but then I posted those on LinkedIn, and then I received the feedback, and that is how, it pushed me to learn more. So whatever you're doing, maybe you can, if not online, just share with a group of people who are learning the same skill. So in that way, the more you get get into practicing, and with all the trial and error, with all the trial and error and getting your hands dirty, and so yeah, that is how you can do. I mean, create a dashboard, share it with people, post it online, receive feedbacks, and so do this on the side. Like on one side, keep learning from wherever you get. On the other side, keep practicing and share it with people. And I think that is what helped me.
I think that is wonderful advice. And, it's funny because when I hear you say, your report wasn't up to par, that's not at all what I remember. That I remember you posting that and getting terrific response. And, I think one of the things that I think everybody is fearful. And I think when you create a report, I've done 15 challenges now. And when you create a report, you see all the warts in it. You see all the things that didn't turn out the way you wanted it exactly.
Another thing I would want to add is what I did was, so Sam, there's in the Enterprise DNA portal, there's a Power BI showcase, so where, the fast forwarded videos of 5 minutes where Sam creates the whole dashboard. So I used to, pause the videos and copy the whole dashboard. So I, practiced 3 to 4. And for like the 5 minutes video, I used to complete the work in maybe 2 to 3 hours, pausing at every point. So that is also how I learned in my initial days.
That's a great way to do it. Yeah, I remember those speed builds, and he is just incredibly fast. Trying to keep up with him. I still have to pause and and catch up. But I think your point about the community and posting, which is that it is a really friendly, generous community, and that when you post your work, even if you think it's not up to par or as good as some of the other stuff you see, and there's always going to be somebody out there with something better, but what I found is it's a remarkably generous community and really positive, and that the feedback you're going to get is respectful and it's constructive. And I think your willingness to do that, and willingness to to listen to the feedback and really hear it, I think that's truly how you get good at this. And I think it's a big part of in a year kind of going from not being a Power BI user to, consulting for, Fortune 500 companies. That's an amazing path. And I think, that feedback and community aspect is a big part of it. So great point on that.
Absolutely.
So I'll add on to that because both Paul and Shrestha, those were two of my topics. So thank you for bringing that. So I'm going to add two more to that. Number one, especially for members, absolutely positively take Alex Badu's data storytelling course. I think Brian, that was the course about how he walks through that whole storytelling and design. I wish I would have had that like 5 years ago because I really, it gave me a different thought. And the other thing I will say is it's very along with what is there is so much, as Paul, you were talking about, there's so much to learn. My thing is find the time, and the time is the 10 minutes you get up in the morning with your coffee before you get to work. It's the 30 minutes while your kid is at sports practice and you're there. A lot of people just are, reading a book or something, but that's 30 minutes you could be learning something. So little chunks over time really add up. Very similar to, Brian, your atomic challenge that you started back at the, in the beginning of the year. So again, little chunks, but those would be my two tips.
Yeah. And that's really how I learned, Tim, which is, I used to take the bus, in the pre-COVID days, I'd take the bus to work every day. And I had about a 45-minute bus ride and, 2 45-minute sessions a day, watching videos and, reading blog entries and all. That's a lot of learning that you put together and, in time that would otherwise, just be spent, reading the paper or napping. And so, so we're getting close to the end, but I quickly want to just wrap up by kind of asking each of you kind of, where do you see this path leading you? And what are some of your goals and, kind of learning objectives and career objectives for the future in this area?
I think for me, it's really opened a whole new world up. Something I never would have thought of. But when I first started this back in February 2021, my wife and I shared the liberty of having COVID together, coupled with the oil and gas industry, with oil prices dropping. And I guess I just had a light bulb moment where I thought, I need a backup plan, and entered data analytics and reading, things like that. So that being said, as a backup plan, and me for one, you're not getting any younger. I think for me, it has started branching out into, doing stuff on the side and helping other companies out. I think there's great opportunity. There's a lot of individuals, a lot of companies, resources that still, they don't have any idea that this exists or what you can do with it. So I think it's a very strong, even as, like I said, a backup plan or even full time. I think it's a very strong career path.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, tons of demand for skilled people.
Yeah.
And for me, now it's again continuing with Power BI and building upon that, but now it's also the expanding into the whole Power Platform, integrating Power Automate, Power Apps. So you start integrating. I mean, we're already now doing things with integrating Power Automate for automated emails and automated, much more automation. So huge opportunity for process improvement to help make processes more efficient. So I am really excited for the future about leveraging these tools.
Great. Yeah. And I think it does just expand the world, even more so. And, kind of, I think Power BI is kind of the horse out in front, but I see the other two, Power Automate and Power Apps, really coming on strong and being kind of equal players at the table in a relatively short period of time. Trish, how about you?
Yeah, so in my case, after listening to Tim and Paul, I want to be the Power BI guy of the organization. So, how to head forward for that? Maybe practicing more, learning more of clearing the concepts, getting back into the key concepts, and apart from that, the aim is to also learn Power Automate, Power Apps, and Power Platform. That is what organizations are asking nowadays, and also mastering SQL along with that. Maybe get into SSAS and SSIS. So they expect the whole MSBI stack. So that is what the plan is. But maybe lead the team in a year or so.
Well, at the pace you're going, I have no doubt that that's in the future. So, well, I really want to thank you all. That your perspectives on this have been fascinating to me. I think that this is really kind of why we do what we do at Enterprise DNA, is to empower folks to learn, to grow, to build their skills, to change their world personally and professionally. And so I really want to thank each of you. And I guess at this point, we'll just open up some time for questions. But really, again, just thank you so much for sharing your time and your experience. And so maybe at a future summit, we'll kind of get this group together and check back and see where you all have gone. So thanks very much.
Well, thank you, Brian.
Thank you so
Appreciate
much.
it.